It was like physical abuse and silence, but for the most part, it was uncertainty with how to relate in a loving way after being punished. I didn't feel safe or protected in those moments. One of the topics that has been coming up for us is how we navigate conflict, how we navigate fights in relationship, especially coming from families of origin that type of dynamic has been so familiar for us and has caused a lot of pain and trauma and grief. And now being in an intentional, intimate relationship with you, those things still come up, those experiences. But we have been able to grow deeper and repair what has been some experiences you've had growing up, navigating conflict, and how does it show up in your relationship with me today?
Some of my earliest memory is of my dad beating my mom.
Mm.
I'm talking as young as 3 years old. So I grew up in a very violent and tumultuous household with substance abuse, deep lack of skill, uncontrolled anger. And I am so grateful that my mom took us away from that environment. And so she ended up becoming a single mom. But the thing about it is, I think is Thich Nhat Hanh. He said that wherever you go, there you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, we left that toxic environment with my dad. However, my mom also had abusive tendencies in her. And so, yeah, growing up with my mom, it was just me, her, and my brother. She was often angry and she expressed her anger with like physical beatings, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, calling names. So that's the extent of conflict. It wasn't always two-sided, at least until I became a teenager, where I could talk back. My mom and my dad both are survivors of the Biafran genocide. My mom lost her eldest brother, and she's the first daughter. She became a liability to her family. So she was sent away into servitude when she was 12 years old. And so the war and resultant genocide displaced her. So if you can imagine the Cinderella story with an auntie who really maltreated her. So of course that lives in your body. So that's kind of how she also ended up raising me and my brother, but most especially me, because she didn't want anything bad to happen to me. She didn't want me to get pregnant and have a kid. So conflict was very violent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt every single thing that you said.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a 2-parent household, very different from you. And my earliest memories of my parents, there was a lot of silence, a lot of strictness in our house, especially being run by my dad. My mother was a nurse. She worked 2 shifts, night shift and a morning shift. She was not as present. So he was the one that had to take care of me and my siblings. I have 4 other siblings. We had to perform goodness in order to be acknowledged and loved. I just happened to be the most disobedient child in the family. I was the one that got most of the beatings, me having to navigate whether I was comfortable talking to my parents about the things that were going on in school, what I was dealing with emotionally. It was like physical abuse and silence, but for the most part, it was uncertainty with how to relate in a loving way after being punished. I didn't feel safe or protected in those moments. I was the black sheep of the family. I was the sibling that my other siblings shouldn't be like. There was a comparison with my older sister and myself and my younger sister. The struggle for love and attention and affection from our parents was a real thing. We had to compete for who gets praised more, who gets shunned more, and for me to deal with feeling abandoned at times. So conflict felt like a scary place to be in. We always needed to be good kids. And if we strayed away from that, it was either a long lecture on what the Bible says you should be as a child and how a parent needs to mold a child, like that indoctrination, and beatings and silent treatments just so that we can correct our behavior.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily think there was anything wrong with that. I would assume that I brought it on myself as a child. My parents moved from Nigeria to the US to have us. And I grew up in Nigeria for the earlier part of my childhood and then spent my adolescence to my teenage years in America. So my grandmother was the one that raised us in the earlier years of our lives, and then my parents kind of completed that cycle. So yeah, conflict has been something I would want to avoid at all costs. Performing goodness was the standard of being in relationship with someone, or the earliest model of how to relate with someone is to be good, and anything away from goodness needs to be punished. It's a sin. It needs to be corrected immediately, or else you would receive retaliation or consequence for your behavior.
Thank you for sharing as well.
Yeah.
I will say, yes, we differ.
Yeah.
Because I was the black sheep, but I was also the first daughter, helping my mom raise my younger brother. And so there was a deep dependence on me. I was parentified so early, so young, for so long that like me and my mom were equals, but she overpowered me. But I was also very disobedient, but I was loud about it. And I think part of the reason why I was able to be that loud and that insubordinate and that disrespectful is because there was no man in the house. I'm 13 years old dealing with her. She probably was in her 30s. So it was like a preteen fighting a grown woman. Of course, my mom could beat me and overpower me, but I put up a fight. If she called me names, I called her names back. If she said yes, I said no. If she said do this, I said no. So that was the tension we grew up in, but she depended on me for so much. So definitely no silent treatment because she needed me.
Yeah.
She needed me in her business. I was her right-hand person. From when I was 15 years old, I will travel across 3 different countries alone to buy goods for her, to do business on her behalf. She sold to the market women in the market, and I would be the one every week to go around and collect money that were owed her. So it was this like fucked up and meshed relationship we had. I think my mom was just like a mean girl to me, but also like I fought back.
Yeah.
Even if she was pummeling me as I'm in the ground, I'm going to fight back.
Yeah. In relation to fighting back,
Yeah.
I remember growing up in Nigeria and having so much energy and strength to be able to fight my grandmother back. When she would beat me, I would run away, physically escape and come back. I felt like I had more agency when I was younger and more authority in my own self. And what I knew was okay and what I knew was too much. I remember one day I was in school and she came into the classroom with a cane, coming to beat me in class.
I had that same experience
Like
with my
she
mom.
walked in, like that woman, she like 50s, 50 something. She had energy. She came into the classroom with that cane, ran across the classroom and hit me. And at some point, I think I received maybe 2 or 3 lashes, and then I like got up and I ran out. I've always remembered those moments where I stood up and then there was a moment I started to fear my safety, that I would be kicked out if I said no. This all started to happen when I returned to America around 8 years old. I noticed that my freedom was not as attainable as much as I felt it while I was in Nigeria. So I just had to perform obedience and hide if I did something wrong. Let's say if I broke the plate or something,
Yeah.
or I damaged the furniture, I would cover it up. And that was my earliest strategy to not getting punished.
Yeah.
Because I knew that if I was punished for too long, I may either lose my sanity or have my spirit be broken at the hands of my parents, especially my dad. In my brain, I needed to make these consideration. How much agency did I have over myself while I was living with my parents under their strict house rules?
Yeah,
And I depended on them.
I can see
And they,
how that would be really difficult,
yeah.
especially in the context of living in America.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing, like if you're in the suburbs of America and your parents are beating you, it's not like you can just run next door to your neighbor.
And I remember being able to run either next door to a neighbor or to their kiosk.
In Nigeria.
In Nigeria, the neighborhood on my way to my school, because I knew the different routes. You know, places that I knew that I felt safe and supported and seen. That was not the case in America. I was treated as a child, which I knew was not my true place in relating with adults.
What do you mean by that?
I built a love and appreciation of life, and I understood the world from the eyes of my auntie. I knew how to talk to adults. I knew how to relate with them. I knew how to crack jokes with them. I felt so comfortable rubbing shoulders with them. There were so many people that I knew in the neighborhood that I could just talk to about life. So when I had to perform being a child, it was inauthentic. It was kind of abusive, that I needed to listen to my parents. I needed to obey them, and I can't ask questions. I can't say why. I can't challenge them because women don't do that, or you're still a child. You're not as responsible. I didn't have any agency, and that was not who I was. So I will say that the times I would rebel and misbehave was my spirit not being settled, being treated the way I was treated, and living in America, that just felt really isolating, you know?
Yeah. Oh
even
my
within
gosh.
family.
Yeah, no, because I completely relate to what you mean when you say that you had agency at a young age and you knew your mind and you could say your mind and you could relate to adults. Because again, remember, I was telling you, I was my mom's right-hand person in business from like so young. When I went to the market women who owed her to collect money for her, I spoke to them from a place of not subservient, but from a place of, oh, I know exactly how much you owe her.
Exactly.
I know exactly how much you paid. I know exactly what you promised you were going to pay this time. And this money that you're giving me, as I counted out, it's not enough.
I respect that.
And I am not leaving your stall until you pay what you said you were going to pay. Here it is on my paper. I can totally see living in America. I think really living under a roof with a man who is enforcing patriarchy in that very direct way can be really scary, and how that would lead to the performance of obedience. Back home, there's only so much my mom would do. She'll beat me, but the neighborhood will come and say, enough now. We didn't live in a self-contained house. We were just open. So if she's beating me in the compound, Mr. Mensa down the road will hear it. And eventually, when she just would not stop, or when it just had gone on for too long, because me, I will cry loud though. I will shout that I'm being killed. So I think maybe when it had gotten to a point where he's like, okay, let me go and say something, he will come and intervene. Or when my mom will kick me out of the house to say, don't come into the house because I didn't come home from school on time, I will go to Mr. Mensa's house and he will bring me back home. So there is that separation that happens when you live in a country like America where
Yeah.
there's not that level of intimacy with your neighbors.
I grew up in a matriarchal setting with my grandmother. There was no man in the house. It was her raising all of my aunties and uncles and us.
Yeah.
So, which was way different
Yeah.
from the experience I had in America. And I remember I was one of the people that she trusted to go with my auntie to actually run errands. I would get to know the neighbors. I would talk to them. I would remember conversations. I could fetch water at the stream with them. I could wash my clothes. I was
Yeah.
connected to just the responsibilities of taking care of a family
Yeah.
as a young child too.
Yeah. So the second part of your question is, how did that first experience with conflict then show itself in my relationships? Girl, I was down for a fight. Whenever, however, whatever, you ain't gonna talk to me crazy. If you started, I will finish it. You would think that I was a boxer because I was like, it is defense. I am playing defense at any point in time. I was in a relationship really young that was deeply inappropriate, just turned 16, and I was engaged to a 32-year-old man who was a part of my congregation. And ever since I was young, I had craved creating a family of my own because I promised myself that what I went through, I would never subject my children to it. So I felt that my ticket out was to get married. So this man took advantage of that. We were engaged. I came to my mom. I showed her my ring. I was like, I'm engaged. I'm going to leave your house. Everyone in the congregation knew. No one said anything. It was given, oh, she's finally going to get settled. And so I went from that to being in another relationship from when I was 16 plus to when I was 21. I was with this other guy for a really long time. He was very mild-mannered, very caring, very sweet, very gentle. And so we were good. And then I got married to him, and he was incredibly physically and verbally abusive, and I matched energy. If you're going to call me names, I'm going to call you names. If you touch me, I'm going to touch you back. If you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. I did not desire to be any different than that. I felt like if you are a man or anyone and you come at me in a way that I did not appreciate or I did not start, the right thing to do was to defend myself.
Yeah.
I felt like it was a moral obligation to myself to defend myself. And honestly, I look back and I'm like, I am so proud of that girl because if I hadn't had that presence of mind to defend myself in the manner that I did so ferociously, even into my 20s, they would have broken my spirit. I have zero doubts about that. So I thank that version of me for standing up, which is why can't nobody ever make me hate hood girls. I'm just saying, I so respect that protective mechanism of if someone disrespects you, if someone is trying to be abusive towards you, you fight back. I think it is very natural. I think it's very ancestral. And you could never make me hate that previous version of me. And you could never make me hate anyone who is there still currently. But as my relationships progressed and it kept moving the same way in every relationship, I had to really sit down and ask myself, even if it was their fault completely, why was I choosing these very specific types of people? What was it that was drawing me into a relationship with them? And this was not so much an intellectual process. It actually came out of a fight. And I don't know, I think I may have told that story on the podcast before, where we were living in a white town in Northern California, Sebastopol. It was 2 a.m. I walked out of the house bare feet, walking through these white people's neighborhoods while she's trying to follow me in a car to get me back in the car. I got back in the car eventually, came back to the house, and I was like, oh, we need to change this.
Mm-hmm.
We need to do better. A few months after that, I started therapy. I was clear that whatever she did was fucked up, but to have me out on these people's streets at 2 a.m. bare feet, I needed to fix that. I needed to do something about that.
Yeah.
And it still took 7 more years with her
Mm-hmm. Wow.
before things changed.
Mm.
It changed gradually. It's such a tedious process. Because there was a lot of raw love, I could be in it for that long because I was clear that I was working on myself, that whatever triggers that she brought my way, it meant I had material to go to therapy with. So it was very much, let me sit on my hands, let me work the program, let me learn how to relate
Yeah.
to a person. And I was just very fortunate to have a really loving and caring therapist who was just a wise person to guide me through that process. And after that relationship is when I met you.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. I
Yeah.
feel like I learn new things every time you retell that story.
Yeah.
And as you were sharing it, I was thinking of how do I track back to relationships that I was finally choosing. I didn't have any interest of being with a man as my form of escape or liberation. I had already realized in myself that I truly liked women. I just have complete, open, honest, attentive relationship with women. But I also knew deep down that it was a huge risk to even talk about it, let alone imagine it out loud. I just knew my ticket to escape was through school. I told myself that I will go to school, get a good degree, get a job, and get the fuck out. I loved and valued and respected my siblings. I loved them to death, but I didn't think I was going to survive living under my parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
So the first experience of me leaving the house for school was boarding school in Nigeria. Again, my stomping grounds. I went to an all-girls boarding school, and I lived out my full lesbian fantasy. I would just keep it straight up. I fell in love. I had my first heartbreak. I explored relationships a lot in secrecy, given that I was in a school that was Catholic, all girls in Nigeria, and being in a relationship with a woman was not just a sin, but grounds for either expulsion or other consequences. It was really risky, but I felt comfortable enough to be able to share my experiences and connect with women and fall in love.
How old were you
I
around
was
this time?
13 around this time, 13, 14.
Was there a fullness of yourself, including conflict in those relationships, or was it more, like you said, your lesbian fantasy?
The conflict was more internal. That I was falling in love and dating women that I knew wouldn't be interested in continuing a relationship outside of school.
Well, y'all were girls at this point,
I mean,
right?
we were still girls,
Okay.
but I had big dreams,
Yeah.
you know, because I knew who I was, but at the same time, I could tell that I would never be accepted. I would never be loved openly and boldly. The internal conflict was what was brewing in that young age. And also being found out. My older sister told my parents about me kissing a girl. And when they found out, they were so like angry and ashamed. And they're like, how could you? And all these things. And this is not what we do. And what's all this about? So it made me go back into the closet in a way out of self-protection. And this same internal conflict showed itself again in college when I was dating a guy. This guy didn't know that I was a lesbian the whole time.
Yeah.
I just kept a lot of secrets to myself.
Got it.
And holding on to a secret and not being fully yourself, it caused a lot of internal turmoil. I felt like I couldn't be myself around certain people. I felt like I had to hide and perform and shapeshift. And all of that nurtured how I eventually entered into an intimate lesbian relationship with my former partner. I was like now 21, 22. And it was hard. I had deep internal homophobia. Like, it didn't feel safe to say my true feelings, address anything that I felt was a slight with her. I was more timid when it came to addressing harm. I tried to please more than be available to be messy. It didn't allow for a relationship to fully develop because I was dealing with so much self-hate, you know? And whenever I would feel triggered or insulted or called out, I would just give the silent treatment. I wouldn't want to talk about it. I'll pretend it never happened, like it didn't exist. We would even go days without talking. And for me, it felt like that was my safest place to be, instead of being courageous enough to say, hey, whatever is going on between us is really painful. I would either pretend that it doesn't exist or like she was just being too sensitive. We didn't call each other names per se, but I would avoid having deep conversations because every time I would remember what a deep conversation would turn into was me getting smaller, not being able to speak my mind, not being able to challenge her thoughts, her opinions, or not being able to open myself up to challenge my own thoughts and opinions, to not feel abandoned or wanting to be in a relationship that nobody gave me any guidance to, that all I could think of was how this is not going to be observed by other people who I loved, how I don't feel as respected or as valued in society. I felt like I put a lot of burden and shame on myself as a result of my upbringing. And I brought that in to my relationships.
As we were both sharing our stories, I couldn't help but think of how this is talking about how attachment styles develop.
Yes. Yeah.
Be it anxious, which I tended to lean towards, or avoidant or disorganized. This is literally it. When you take the theory out of it, you can see it mapped out somatically. That, of course, this is how you will end up showing up in relationships.
Yeah, and passed down like by mimicking our caregivers and the relationships we had with them.
Yeah. Every time we talk, me too, I get to know you a little bit more. So this is pretty cool. So then what happened when we met each other?
Oh.
What happened for you?
Oh, for me, oh man, I ended the relationship in 2019. Well, we ended it because it wasn't working for us. I had lost my job at the time, which brought me to the Bay Area. So I decided to move to Oakland. I decided to live by myself and start doing the work. Start looking inside of me. Start to unravel all of the shame and the guilt and the self-punishment and the anger and the angst that I had been carrying for so long. Because I wasn't working around that time, I had nothing else to do but just to live. Unfortunately and fortunately, COVID happened in 2020.
Yeah.
And I made this pact with myself to, one, stop drinking alcohol. I didn't feel like I wanted to escape in that way anymore, that I would do something kind for myself, cook for myself, go on long walks with my dog, rest well, be in nature, spend time in nature, cook every day. One of the things I didn't like was having to eat leftovers because there was something that it reminded me of, this scarcity over food and items, that we have to cook for the future or we have to cook for the week. And even though it's going bad, we still have to manage to finish it. We couldn't throw food away. So I told myself, I'm going to try to learn how to cook a dish like every day, have no leftovers. Twice a day, cook something small, eat it, enjoy it. Even if it doesn't taste good, enjoy the process, eat as much as you could, and try to remind yourself that you are loved, you are cared for, that you're safe here. I spent the next 2 to 3 years doing that for myself. I also found psilocybin mushrooms, which allowed me to remove that egoic veil and tap into my inner emotions and get a deeper self-reflection that is not clouded by my fears or judgments or shame. And I realized that deep down inside, I'm a fucking badass motherfucker. I'm an amazing girl with agency and a bold ass woman.
Yeah.
And that I should never forget that little girl. She was there for me and had like my personal reawakening and reclamation of self and identity around that time period before I met you.
Yeah. Listening to you tell that story of that period between 2020, 2019 and 2022, essentially. It reminds me when people ask this question, do I have to be alone to heal? Do I have to be in relationship to heal? Can I heal in relationship? Our journeys to our healing is so different because that's what worked for us. I think for me personally, I needed to be in relationship. I needed to witness myself reflected in another so that I can have a framework within which to understand what needed work on. On the flip side, you were alone. You were doing work somatically. You were going on walks. You were doing psilocybin. You were cooking for yourself. And me, I was taking care of my partner. She needed a lot of care emotionally because I started my healing process with her. And when I started, it was very clearly, it's all my fault.
Yeah.
It's all my fault because the way I would lash back was so loud and I would hulk out all the time. And for those who don't know what hulking out is, it's this theory by trauma psychologist Jacob Ham about the Incredible Hulk does. You essentially lose your mind for a little bit. You become this big thing in protection of yourself. That is how I navigated conflict. So I would hulk out, but as I kept doing the work, those episodes got fewer and fewer, and it became clear that I was not the only problem. So we're faced with, I'm having to emotionally carry her and encourage her that you can do this work. And I still had the presence of mind to take care of myself. What did happen though was I did not have any career aspirations during that time. I was a registered nurse. I just worked my 3 shifts. And in fact, I even dropped down to 2 shifts. I would work only 9 months out of the year. I was not pursuing writing. I wasn't pursuing any creative endeavors. I just knew that I needed to make figuring myself out my full-time business. So I needed to be in relationship to be able to do that because I don't know that I would have been able to do it in solitude with no active triggers. Because if I'm not triggered, like I said, I don't start shit. I just finish it.
Yeah.
Which means if I was alone, it would literally have appeared that I was perfect.
Yeah, I hear you say that. And for me, I knew I was the problem, which I wanted to mitigate any harm caused by focusing on myself.
Yeah.
Without any distractions. That was one of the things I appreciate about being in school is that I could focus on one thing. I couldn't multitask a relationship.
Yeah.
It felt so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it made sense. I didn't have any practice with being in a fully fledged relationship that was nurturing and audacious and pinned.
Yeah.
So having to go back into the source, which is me, I felt like I had enough people to contend with. All of my trauma, all of my parts, it was just enough. It was enough.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely valid. The reason why I brought that part out is if
Yeah.
you are someone who is on your healing journey, started, or deep in it, and you're having to wonder, is there one way to do it? We're evident that
Mm.
there isn't a perfect way to do this.
Yeah.
I think that you can heal in relationship, you can heal in solitude. You just have to know what works for you. Don't let the noise of what people say healing is supposed to look like keep you from figuring that out yourself.
And focusing on it intentfully.
Yes, whether you're in a relationship or not. Thank you.
That's the real work.
Let me just say that because I went to weekly therapy every single fucking week for 8 years. And I did not work extra shifts. I did not. Listen, I read all the books. I listened to all the podcasts.
I hear you.
And so
I wrote so much. I filled so many journals around that period. I created so much art. I started my business around that period too.
Yeah.
I learned how to cook my traditional Igbo delicacies. I learned so much about Igbo cosmology and spirituality and philosophy. It was so much.
Yeah.
There was enough to do. And I did it literally every single day I could.
So just commit and know that it's going to take those years of commitment. And if you're in a relationship, that relationship might not survive it. And if you're, and it's okay. Impermanence is a thing that we all need to embrace and grieve. But like low key, high key, so much had gone through in that relationship, even though I was objectively a better human being, there was just no way. We got divorced. It was done. So much had gone on. I think one thing I've learned from you in your journey is how important it is to be grounded in the body and spiritually even. That's not the route I went. There was a little bit of somatic stuff there for me because that's when I got into powerlifting.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Powerlifting was such a deep meditation for me. Listen, as I deadlift 315 pounds, it don't matter what someone says to me. I'm going to go lift that way. I knew I didn't need to flex my mouth muscle to show that I was strong, to show that they couldn't beat me down. I found my strength in that. So I guess, there is an element of somatic body involvement in healing that is so important.
And to that, I will say meeting you reignited my appreciation for reading other people's stories so that I don't feel alone. Yeah, I feel like I've definitely read more since meeting you.
Yeah.
I had started meditating, but I don't think I fully got into it more intentfully until meeting you.
Yeah.
There is something that feels easy for me to do in my body, but when it comes to standing up for myself, I felt like it lacked so much training to speak my mind and to make people just see me in a very clear way and to not feel timid or small or diluted, which I feel like I can remember it more and more through you.
I love this. And then we get into the chapter of how, when we met and how our conflict patterns has shown up, but also how that has reflected the work we did prior to meeting each other and how we're still moving through that. And I think that makes for a really good second part of this episode.
I agree.
Okay. We're going to leave y'all here. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about how conflict shows up in our relationships still and how we navigate it with our different attachment styles and our different origin stories and our different traumas. How do we go through it? And what does aftercare look like? Because conflict ultimately is inevitable. So Can't wait to come back here.
Yeah.
Okay?
Do
Can't
it.
wait to have y'all. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it, comment, review. It really helps. You know, the podcast bros are everywhere. I'm not here to compete on that level. But what I am here for is for this conversation to get to the people that will benefit greatly from it. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's it.
Okay, catch you in part 2.
All right. Bye.